The New York Ripper isn't just another killer in the Dexter universe. He feels more like a ghost, someone who slipped through every crack, killed without consequence, and vanished. His brutality and ability to evade capture make him one of the most unsettling killers introduced in Resurrection so far. Detective Claudette Wallace's desire to solve this case and Dexter's quiet involvement so far are two sides of the same coin. Today, we're breaking down what we know about the New York Ripper and the real reasons Dexter may have stepped into this investigation. By now, we are all aware that Claudette Wallace is obsessed with the New York Ripper case. In fact, it's mentioned that her fixation on the murders nearly ended her career. Her unwillingness to let it go made her isolated within her department and branded her as someone whose personal ambitions could overshadow the plans the rest of her team had in mind. This alone shows Claudette as someone who may be similar to Dexter in one very important way. She isn't still searching for the Ripper to get professional glory. She's chasing him because she can barely help herself. It may look like selfish career climbing to outsiders, but those who know her can see that Claudette's obsession with the Ripper case is less about ambition and more like a compulsion. She has a psychological need to solve perplexing cases that overrides self-preservation, and the New York Ripper is a big one. It probably doesn't help that the Ripper taunts the police and the victims' families with voicemails even years after his spree was over. Claudette's determination to catch him comes from the same engine that has always driven Dexter, even if he sometimes convinces himself that what he does is about justice. He knows it's deeper than that. Dexter just can't help himself. The New York Ripper occupies a unique echelon amongst serial killer ranks. He is responsible for more than 20 murders in New York City and somehow always managed to avoid being apprehended or even identified. For the longest time, the cops didn't even know what weapon he was actually using. Even worse are those phone calls he continued to torment victims' families with, ensuring that the trauma never ended. This only elevates the Ripper beyond a standard killer and into something closer to a legend or a monster that just refuses to die. Some may argue that this is precisely why bringing the Ripper down matters to Dexter. Dexter has always believed that other killers' actions can be studied, predicted, and eventually stopped. The Ripper running free stands as proof that sometimes that isn't the case, and that idea is threatening to Dexter's worldview. He also hates to be outsmarted by other predators. The satisfaction of seeing the Ripper brought in is just too appealing to pass up. And despite no longer being in official law enforcement, Dexter has already began helping Detective Wallace on the case in his own way. Dexter's first real act of assistance in the New York Ripper case happened after he toured Leon Prater's vault. Prater's Vault was a carefully curated mini-museum of serial killer artifacts from all over the country. When Dexter encountered the Ripper's weapon, he didn't think much of it, but later he realized that the police were going in the wrong direction. Years of investigation led Claudette to believe the Ripper used a crowbar to commit his crimes, but Dexter knew the truth thanks to Prater's disturbing collection. While holding a lecture during Harrison's college tour, Detective Wallace discusses the New York Ripper case and tells the attendees that the Ripper used a crowbar. But after the lecture was over, she spoke with Dexter, and he made it a point to tell her she was wrong. According to his expertise, the blood spatter patterns did not align with such a short instrument. The curvature of the stains, the angles of impact, and the distribution of force all suggested a hooked component, sort of like a manhole cover hook. This moment is pure Dexter. He's helping authorities and playing them at the same time. When he tells Claudette what he sees, Dexter gave Claudette something else to focus on besides Harrison and himself, but he also knowingly reinvigorated her obsession with the Ripper case by presenting this new angle. With information like that, tracking down the Ripper became a lot more likely, and they both knew it. At that point, Dexter made a clear choice to do more than passively follow the New York Ripper investigation in newspapers. He was basically shaping it. Sure, Dexter saw the weapon in Prater's vault, but his analysis of the crime scene photos was still incredibly accurate. Effortlessly, Dexter outperformed years of police work with a single observation, showing once again that the killers often understand other killers better than the people trying to stop them. But luckily for her, Claudette's willingness to listen to Dexter, even without without fully trusting him, became the first chance at a partnership that neither of them openly acknowledges. Dexter's subtle manipulation of the investigation reflects his ability to adapt to this environment. He no longer dominates from the inside of a department, but he can still influence outcomes from the margins rather than controlling them outright. Even more telling than Dexter identifying the weapon was his decision to leave the New York Ripper file behind in Prater's vault for authorities to find. He probably didn't do that by mistake. Dexter is notoriously methodical to the point of ritualizing everything from his morning routine to his kill routine. The odds of him simply forgetting the file are slim. Dexter fans immediately recognize the probable intent behind it. By ensuring the file resurfaces without attaching himself to it, Dexter manipulates the investigation while maintaining distance. That's exactly like what he did throughout the original series when he was helping the police catch a killer. He often engineered discoveries that advanced justice while keeping his own involvement invisible or making it seem coincidental. It's possible that the choice to leave the file behind confirmed that Dexter is already committed to the outcome of the Ripper case, even if he hasn't realized it himself yet. And there are a few ways and reasons that Dexter could choose to continue helping Claudette. One of the most widely discussed ideas is that the New York Ripper is not meant to be resolved quickly or even cleanly. Unlike most Dexter villains, the Ripper exists almost entirely in the past, which seems intentional. The prevailing theory suggests the Ripper is being positioned as a long-term presence, a shadowy figure who grows more defined as Dexter and Claudette uncover new evidence, suppressed leads, and deliberate red herrings, and more information on the killer. From this idea, so many theories become possible because there is no telling where the investigation will take Claudette and Dexter, depending on what they learn about not only the Ripper, but also each other. An idea circulating is that Dexter recognizes something disturbingly familiar in the Ripper's behavior. Dexter fans often point out that the Ripper's ongoing success in evading capture points to a level of planning, discipline, and skill akin to Dexter's. It's clear that the Ripper is following some sick internal logic that investigators never fully understood. Dexter also believes that police never fully understood his reason for killing, which is why even when they got close, he always managed to get away. The file he left behind for Claudette could expose details that help police better understand the Ripper's mind and motivations leading to his arrest. If that happened, it would help Dexter know if having his own true motives identified could eventually lead to his downfall too. This theory suggests that the New York Ripper functions as a warning about Dexter's potential future. According to this interpretation, the Ripper represents what happens when a serial killer outlives his narrative usefulness and fades into obscurity, leaving behind unresolved trauma and unanswered questions. Dexter fans argue that Dexter leaving the Ripper file behind was not only about reviving the case, but about confronting the possibility that this is how his own story could end. And it kind of reframes Dexter's interest in the case as introspective and self-protective rather than completely altruistic. That is to say, he isn't helping Claudette solve the case to save others as much as he is studying a version of himself that existed without Harry's guidance. The Ripper is a killer who operated freely, avoided capture for years, but is still at risk of being identified at any time, just like Dexter. Still, helping Claudette is a way for Dexter to make sure that at least one monster isn't able to just vanish the way he hopes to. And studying how the police handle the New York Ripper case moving forward could help him evade them himself later. Perhaps the most controversial theory gaining traction across fan forums is the idea that Detective Wallace herself could be connected to the New York Ripper in a way not yet revealed. While there is no canon evidence suggesting this at this time, the theory persists because of how carefully ambiguous her characterization is. Claudette is brilliant, obsessive, deeply familiar with the case, and had access to information few others possessed. Some fans argue that in a franchise built on killers hiding in plain sight, an employee of the police department being secretly tied to the Ripper in some sinister way would be right on brand. Think Captain Aaron Spencer, Zoe Kruger, and of course Dexter himself. Even people who reject the theory acknowledge that it's not at all impossible, and if true, would only increase Dexter's need key to solve the mystery of the Ripper. Claudette seems like a straight arrow. She's very upfront, doesn't appear to play any mind games, especially when it comes to her job. Sure, she's got a weird obsession with the Bee Gees, but if she is connected to the case, has worked with or been compromised by the Ripper, that would be one of the biggest twists yet. If the Ripper has managed to get Claudette in his pocket and the police off his back, Dexter would be the perfect partner to help Claudette get out of the killer's web. I personally really miss the days when Dexter worked with a detective like Deb, so this is really good to see. It may not seem likely, but it's incredibly compelling and can't be ruled out just yet. Tied into that theory is the recurring idea that suggests the New York Ripper may already be dead, and that the true mystery lies in who protected him or benefited from his disappearance. This theory leans into themes of institutional corruption and buried truth, proposing that the Ripper's survival was not luck, but assistance. Many people are speculating that the Ripper's ability to evade capture implies inside knowledge of investigative procedures, response times, and evidence handling. Some believe the Ripper may have been connected to law enforcement indirectly, perhaps through informants, corrupted officials, or some other access to protected information. This theory strengthens the idea that Dexter's role is crucial because he understands how killers exploit systems from the inside. In this version of events, Dexter's role shifts from being Claudette's sideline assistant to an outright detective and hunter, forced to decide how much of the truth can be exposed without implicating himself or destroying Claudette's career if it comes into play. If solving the New York Ripper exposes information that exposes Dexter, or reveals patterns similar to his own crimes, he may be forced to decide whether justice in this case is worth risking his own exposure. The worst case scenario for Dexter is that helping to solve the Ripper investigation could come back to bite him. People are speculating that Claudette will eventually realize Dexter is withholding more than he shares. According to this theory, the New York Ripper case will become the lens through which Claudette starts to question Dexter's uncanny insights, emotional detachment, and indistinctive understanding of a killer's mind. After all, the details about the Bay Harbor Butcher case are fishy to say the least. Not only that, but Batista already warned her about Dexter, and his past is very sketchy. The tension between them is expected to gradually evolve into a cat and mouse dynamic, where Claudette relies on Dexter's perspective even as she grows suspicious of his true nature. You can compare this potential plotline to Dexter's past relationships with people like Dokes and Lundy. They may have been suspicious of Dexter to one degree or another, but they still needed his expertise for other cases they were working. Claudette could be walking into this exact same scenario. Funnily enough, this would also be the worst case scenario for her because we all know what tends to happen to people who get too close to Dexter's secret. Dexter knows how to find information he wants to know, even if it's not the easiest task. By trailing Claudette as she investigates, he could keep pace with the direction of the case without anyone knowing. Depending on what he learns during these possible stakeouts, he could even get ahead of the department in solving it. Whereas they have to wait for warrants and go through proper channels to gather evidence, Dexter doesn't have to worry about any of that slowing him down. He can get paces ahead of the police by ignoring their protocols and following his own instincts to get more information on the Ripper. He could orchestrate seemingly chance encounters with victims' families to get more information about the direct victims to find a pattern police missed. He could break into their homes to look for evidence the cops may have missed or left behind during the initial investigation. His forensic skills would give him a keener eye and a better chance of finding details others may have overlooked, whether on purpose or by mistake. He could call in anonymous tips for Claudette to use in her official pursuit, making sure that the Ripper doesn't get away again based on a random oversight. If someone in law enforcement has been involved in the Ripper's continued freedom, he could expose that person to Wallace. He could even eliminate that person himself, leaving the Ripper exposed, and without the inside man who he had been relying on to outmaneuver police. With Dexter's skills and blinding determination to eliminate killers, there are plenty of ways he could be an asset to Claudette in tracking down the Ripper. However he chooses to help, one thing is certain. With both Detective Wallace and Dexter on his trail now, the New York Ripper's days of anonymity are numbered. What ultimately makes Dexter's involvement inevitable is the alignment between his code and the Ripper's unresolved and disgusting legacy. Dexter was created to deal with killers the system could not stop. The New York Ripper is the clearest example of that dynamic yet. Dexter has always been most motivated when protecting his family and confronting particularly elusive killers. By helping Claudette and her team catch the New York Ripper, he could be doing both. The department's attention will be far away from him and his son, meaning he can continue his own personal ritual without much scrutiny. And on top of that, he gets the satisfaction of knowing the Ripper is off the streets. Helping solve this case also means that Dexter can learn more about how the police department operates in his new home of New York City. It's almost like a return to his core function, where sometimes subtle manipulation is more useful than violence for Dexter's interests. He has quite a few reasons to help Detective Wallace find the Ripper, but how he does so and how it impacts everyone around him is not as clear just yet. Claudette Wallace represents a version of law enforcement Dexter can work alongside, even if trust never fully forms. She's not naive about human nature, and she isn't comforted by procedure or official case closure. Her obsession is almost like Dexter's. As the case progresses, many believe Claudette will be forced into ethically questionable decisions, narrowing the gap in morality between her and Dexter that seemed so obvious before. Her obsession takes hold of her more and more, while Dexter appears increasingly restrained and level-headed by comparison. In that inversion, the New York Ripper case becomes less about catching a killer and more about revealing how thin the line between justice and corruption can really be at times. Dexter fans have been quick to recognize that this storyline is designed to stretch across multiple episodes, maybe even seasons, deepen Claudette's character development, and force Dexter into choices that are far more difficult than simply staying alive. This is really reminiscent of old school Dexter, like when he was chasing the Trinity Killer. Either way, as these theories continue to evolve, one conclusion remains consistent. Dexter's involvement in the New York Ripper case is already irreversible. He has altered its trajectory, revived its relevance, and injected his perspective into its foundation. Whether the Ripper is caught, exposed posthumously, or revealed to be something more complex than expected, Dexter already dipped his toes in the water, and there is little doubt he will be fully immersed in this case sooner or later. Were there any compelling theories we missed? Which do you think is most likely to play out? Let us know in the comments below. I'm really interested in this one. And if you liked this video, check out our breakdown of everything we know about Dexter Resurrection Season 2 so far. Become your own version of the Ripper with that like and subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.